She was born different. Her body was bigger than the rest of her people. Her arms were longer, her shoulders wider, her back stronger. From the first moment, the elders looked at her with fear. They whispered, "Too large, too strange. She will never carry life." In her world, life was everything. To give birth, to continue the colony, was the highest honor. A female who could not reproduce was seen as useless. And so, when she grew older, the Council of Elders made their decision. They called her to the Circle of Stone. Hundreds of eyes stared at her. Some eyes were full of pity, others full of hate. The leader raised his hand and spoke in a cold voice. "She is too big. Her body cannot carry life. She cannot be a mother. She will only bring weakness to us. Cast her out." Her heart broke that day. She wanted to shout, to beg, but her people did not listen. They turned their backs, they closed their gates. And with no family, no friend, she was pushed into the empty desert that surrounded the colony. For many days, she walked alone. The sky above was filled with twin moons, but the land below was cruel. Sharp rocks cut her feet. Hot winds burned her skin. At night, the cries of predators echoed, and she pressed her back against the cold stone to hide in the shadows. Still, she did not die. She was strong, stronger than the others had ever known. They called her too big, but her size gave her power. She could climb higher, run longer, fight harder. But strength could not fill the emptiness inside her chest. She wanted belonging. She wanted a family. And most of all, she wanted to know what it meant to be a mother. But that dream was stolen. Or so she believed. On the 10th night, as the wind howled across the dark desert, she sat beside a dead fire. Her stomach growled with hunger. She looked at the stars, cold and silent, and whispered, "Why was I born like this? Why give me a body too big for life?" Her voice faded in the air. She thought no one could hear her. Then, she heard it at first. It was only a faint sound, hidden in the wind. A strange rhythm. Not like the howls of animals, not like the cries of storms. It was mechanical, repeating a signal. Her head lifted sharply. Her heart beat fast. She turned toward the sound, ears straining. There it was again, a pulse of energy, like metal crying in the distance. She rose to her feet. For a long moment, she stood still, afraid it might be her imagination. But the signal grew clearer. It came from beyond the desert hills, far away. With every step, the sound grew stronger. Her body ached, but her curiosity pushed her forward. She climbed over black rocks, crossed dry riverbeds, and followed the strange signal until she reached a high cliff. And then she saw it. Below her, in the hollow of the desert, something shone under the moons. A shape of broken metal, smoke rising into the air. It was unlike anything she had ever seen before. The surface gleamed with strange marks. Lights flickered weakly, as if the thing was alive but dying. She narrowed her eyes. This was not from her world. This was something alien. And then she heard another sound, a human sound. A voice, weak, pained, but alive. Her breath caught. She had been alone for so long, cast away with no one. Now, down in the hollow, she could hear someone calling out. A language she did not know, but the pain in the voice was clear. For a long moment, she hesitated. Was it a trap? A predator's trick? Or was it real? She remembered the council's words. She cannot be a mother. She will only bring weakness. But as she looked at the broken ship, at the struggling figure crawling beside it, she felt something she had never felt before. A pull inside her chest. It was not fear. It was not pity. It was hope. The wind blew hard against her back, as if pushing her toward the hollow. She stepped closer to the cliff's edge, staring at the human figure. He was small compared to her. His body fragile, His movements slow. Blood marked his side, and his breathing was heavy. Yet, even in pain, he tried to rise. He tried to survive. She clenched her fists. Her heart beat fast. She knew this moment was important. She turned away. She would remain forever alone, lost in the desert. But if she went down, everything could change. The voice called again, weaker this time, almost fading. And in that moment, she made her choice. She began to climb down the cliff, stone by stone, step by step, toward the broken ship, toward the human, toward a destiny she did not yet understand. The desert was silent except for the soft groan of broken metal. She climbed down the cliff, her hands gripping rough stone, her breath steady but fast. The strange ship lay below, cracked open like a giant shell. Smoke hissed from its side. Sparks danced in the dark, fading as quickly as they came. Her eyes scanned the wreck. The smell of burning wires filled the air. The ground around it was blackened as if fire had rained from the sky. She had never seen such a thing before, and then she saw him. The figure lay half on the sand, half against the wreck. His body was covered in strange cloth, torn and burned. His face was pale, his lips dry, and his chest rose with weak, broken breaths. One of his hands pressed against his side where blood soaked through. He was small compared to her, fragile. Yet there was something in the way he clung to life that made her pause. She stepped closer. The sand crunched under her feet. His head lifted weakly. His eyes opened just enough to see her. The moment their eyes met, time seemed to stop. Fear flashed across his face. He tried to speak, but the words were broken. "Stay back," he whispered. His voice was rough, filled with pain. She tilted her head. She did not understand his language, but she understood fear. He looked at her as if she was a monster, another danger waiting to kill him. She could have left. She had no reason to stay. But something inside her would not allow her to walk away. She remembered the emptiness of exile, the loneliness of the desert, and the cruel voices of her people. Now, for the first time, she stood before someone who was even more alone than her. Slowly, carefully, she bent down and placed her large hand on the sand, palm open. A gesture of peace, the human's chest rose and fell quickly. His eyes darted to her hand, then back to her face. He did not understand, but he did not turn away either. His lips moved again. She could not make sense of the words, but she heard the desperation in them. He was close to death. Without thinking, she reached out. Her fingers brushed against his shoulder. He flinched in pain, but he did not push her away. With surprising gentleness, she lifted him into her arms. For a moment, he froze, too weak to resist, too afraid to believe. His eyes stared up at her, wide, unblinking. She carried him as if he weighed nothing, her strong arms steady. The desert wind screamed around them. She turned away from the broken ship and began to walk. She did not know where she was taking him. She only knew she could not leave him to die. Hours passed. The night grew colder. The human's body trembled in her arms. His breath was shallow, his skin burning with fever. She found a cave in the rocks and stepped inside, away from the biting wind. She set him down gently against the wall. He groaned, his face twisting in pain. His eyes opened again, weak but searching. He lifted one trembling hand and pointed to himself. His lips formed a word. "Daniel." She blinked. She did not understand. Again, he pointed to his chest. "Daniel?" His voice was stronger this time, though strained. Her eyes softened. She realized he was telling her his name. "Daniel." She placed her hand on her own chest. For a long moment, she hesitated. No one had ever asked her name. No one had cared. Finally, she spoke in her deep voice. A single word. Her name. Daniel's lips curved into the smallest smile. Even in pain, he understood the night dragged on. Outside, the storm of sand began to rise. The wind howled, filling the cave with sharp dust. She sat beside the human, shielding him with her body. Her size, once hated by her people, now became his protection. As the storm raged, predators crept near. Their glowing eyes flashed in the darkness, watching from the cave mouth. She felt their hunger, their patience. They were waiting for weakness. She rose to her feet, standing tall, her body casting a long shadow in the firelight. Her eyes burned with warning as she faced them. For hours, she stood guard while Daniel slept, her presence keeping the beasts away. At last, the storm began to fade. The predators vanished into the desert. The cave grew quiet once more. Daniel stirred, his eyes opening slowly. His voice was weak, but his gaze was steady. He looked at her not with fear this time, but with something different. Trust. She lowered herself back beside him. For the first time since her exile, she was not alone. The desert sun rose slowly, painting the sky in fire and gold. Inside the cave, Daniel woke with a cough. His body was weak, but his eyes opened with determination. The strange giant sat near the entrance, her back straight, her gaze watching the horizon. For a moment, he thought he was still dreaming. A creature, taller and stronger than any human, sat silent like a guardian. She was not his enemy. She had carried him, protected him, and stood between him and death. He whispered, "Why? Why help me?" Of course, she did not understand his words, but she turned, her dark eyes meeting his, and in her gaze he saw the answer: loneliness. The same loneliness that lived inside him since the crash. For the next few days, they survived together. She hunted strange desert beasts with her bare hands, tearing through their hides with strength her people once called too much. Daniel watched, in awe, as she brought food to him, laying it gently at his side like an offering. He tried to teach her his words, simple ones. He tapped his chest again. "Daniel." She repeated his sound, though her deep voice made it heavy. "Neil." He smiled. It was clumsy, but it was his name. Then he pointed at her. His hand rested on her chest, gentle, asking. For a long silence, she did not speak. No one had asked her name before, not in kindness. At last, her lips moved. A single word. Low and rough, Daniel repeated it back to her. This time, she smiled. Two outcasts, two names, one bond forming in the empty desert. But life in the cave was never safe. The desert was alive with predators, strange lizards the size of men, silent shadows with eyes that glowed red. Each night, she stood guard, her massive frame blocking the entrance, her hand clutching sharp stone as a weapon. Daniel could barely stand, but he refused to be useless. When he saw her wounds from a fight, he tore strips from his clothes and wrapped them around her cuts. He found small plants in the rocks and pressed them into her hand, showing her which ones healed pain. Together, they became more than survivors. They became partners. One night, as the moons rose high, Daniel sat beside her. The firelight flickered across their faces. He pointed to the stars above, thousands of them, burning bright. "Earth," he whispered, pointing at one small corner of the endless dark. She followed his finger. She did not understand the word, but she understood his meaning. His home, his people. Far away, a deep sadness crossed his face. He would never see it again. She looked at him, and for the first time, she wanted to give someone comfort. She placed her large hand over his small one, her touch steady, warm. Daniel looked up at her. In her eyes, he did not see the monster his fear once imagined. He saw strength. He saw kindness. He saw someone cast aside, just like him, The bond between them grew. But danger never slept. One evening, the desert sky turned black with clouds. A storm was coming. The wind screamed across the land, lifting sand into great walls. The cave shook with the force of it. Daniel clung to the stone, coughing as dust filled his lungs. The exile pulled him close, wrapping her arms around him. Her body shielded him from the storm, even as sharp sand cut into her own skin. The storm raged. For hours, lightning cracked across the desert, striking the ground with fire. The earth trembled, and then in a flash of white part of the cliff collapsed. A new path opened near the cave, revealing something hidden beneath the desert. Stone steps, ancient and broken, leading down into darkness. Daniel's eyes widened. Even in his weakness, he knew what he was looking at. This was no natural cave. This was a ruin, something old, something secret. The exile stared at it, her breath heavy. A strange feeling moved through her chest. She did not know why, but something about the hidden place called to her. That night, as the storm calmed, Daniel looked at her with fire in his eyes. He pointed to the steps, then to himself, then to her. His meaning was clear. We explore together. She hesitated. The unknown was dangerous. But as she looked at him, this fragile, stubborn human who refused to give up, she felt something she had not felt in all her years. Belonging slowly, she nodded. The decision was made. Two outcasts, bound by survival, by loneliness, and by trust, would walk into the darkness together. The storm passed, but the world did not return to silence. The cave still echoed with the sound of falling stones, and the new passage gaped open like the mouth of a giant beast. Dust rose from the dark stairway that led deep into the earth. Daniel sat against the wall, weak but awake, his eyes fixed on the opening, shining with curiosity. Kay pointed toward it, then looked at her. His meaning was simple. We must go. She hesitated. All her life, she had known only the desert and the colony that rejected her. But now, the earth itself had revealed a hidden path. Her heart told her it was not chance. It was destiny. Slowly, she helped Daniel to his feet. He leaned on her, arm his body small, but his spirit burning. Together, step by step, they entered the passage. The air grew colder as they descended. The walls of stone were covered in strange carvings, symbols glowing faintly in the dark. Daniel reached out, tracing them with his fingers. His lips moved softly, whispering, as if trying to understand. She could not read the symbols, but she felt their power. The shapes seemed alive, humming inside her bones. At the bottom of the steps, they entered a vast chamber. The ceiling stretched. High above, carved with spirals of light. In the center stood a pillar of crystal, pulsing like a heartbeat. The glow filled the room, soft but powerful, as if the stone itself was alive. Daniel gasped. His voice trembled. Life. This place. It's about life. She tilted her head, not understanding his words, but she felt the truth. Something in the chamber called to her. Something that reached inside her chest and stirred the part of her that had always been empty. Memories returned. The council's cold voices. Too big. Too different. She cannot carry life. Their judgment had broken her. But now, standing before the crystal, she felt a warmth deep within, a whisper that the elders had been wrong. Daniel staggered closer to the pillar. His hand hovered above the glowing surface. He looked back at her, eyes wide, filled with wonder. Slowly, carefully, he pressed his palm against the crystal. A shock of light raced through the chamber. The carvings on the walls blazed with fire, and the floor shook beneath their feet. Daniel fell to his knees, gasping. She rushed to him, lifting him before he could collapse. His eyes were wild, glowing faintly with the same light. He whispered. One word, creation. She held him tightly, confused, afraid, but unable to look away from the crystal. Images filled her mind, not from her memory, but from the stone itself. She saw shapes of her people long ago, larger than her, powerful and strong. She saw them carrying children in their arms, their size not a curse, but a gift. Her breath caught. The truth struck her like lightning. She was not broken. She was not useless. Her body had not been made too big. It had been made for something. Greater tears burned in her eyes. For the first time, she felt a spark of hope. Daniel's hand clutched hers. His voice was weak, but steady. Mother, you can be a mother. The words were strange on his lips, yet she understood their meaning. His eyes, full of pain and wonder, told her everything. She looked at him, the fragile human who refused to let her believe in lies. The one who had given her a name and a bond, and now a truth that changed her entire life. But before she could answer, the chamber roared. The carvings on the walls shifted, and the air grew heavy. From the shadows, shapes began to move. Guardians of stone, carved into forms of beasts, their eyes burning with the same glow as the crystal. Ancient protectors awakened after centuries of silence. Daniel's grip tightened on her arm. His voice shook. They don't want us here. She rose to her full height, standing between him and the guardians. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with fire. For the first time in her life, she had something to protect, something to fight for. The guardians stepped forward, heavy and slow, their stone claws scraping against the floor. She spread her arms, her massive frame, blocking Daniel from their sight. Her voice rumbled deep and fierce, a promise to the darkness. No one will take this from me. The chamber shook with thunder. The guardians of stone stepped forward, their massive bodies scraping against the floor. Their eyes glowed with fire, their heavy limbs moved with purpose. They were protectors of the crystal, protectors of the secret. Daniel leaned against the wall, his face pale. He whispered in fear, We can't fight them." But she was already standing tall, her arms wide, her breath steady. She had been cast out for being too big, but in this moment, her size was her strength. She clenched her fists and faced the guardians head-on. The first one charged. Its stone feet cracked the ground as it swung a giant arm at her. She ducked, the air roaring past her ear. With a growl, she threw her shoulder forward and slammed into it. The impact echoed like thunder. The guardian staggered, cracks spreading across its chest. Daniel's eyes widened. He had never seen such raw strength. But the guardians were many. Another leaped forward, claws glowing with the same strange light as the crystal. She grabbed a broken piece of stone from the ground and swung it like a weapon. Sparks flew as stone struck stone. The guardian reeled back, but the force shook her arms. She bared her teeth. For once, her body was not a curse. It was her gift. Daniel struggled to stand. His body was weak, but his spirit would not sit still. He searched the glowing walls, his eyes scanning the ancient carvings. Symbols burned with fire, patterns shifting as if alive. His breath caught. He understood something. These guardians, they're not just protectors, they're tests. She could not hear his words, but she felt the urgency in his voice. Another guardian advanced, its stone hand smashing the ground where she had just stood. Dust exploded around them. She leaped back, grabbed Daniel, and pulled him away from the falling debris. His eyes met hers. His voice shook but carried fire. "If we want the crystal's gift, we have to prove we deserve it." The battle raged. Guardians circled them, moving like shadows of ancient power. She fought with everything she had, fists, stones, even her own body as a shield. Her arms bled, her chest heaved, but she refused to fall. Daniel, trembling, pressed his hand against the glowing carvings. His fingers traced the symbols, desperate to find meaning. And then the carvings shifted under his touch. The light flowed like water, forming new shapes. He gasped, his voice cracked. It's not strength alone, it's choice. We have to choose. She turned at his cry, barely dodging the strike of another guardian. She looked at him, this fragile human, glowing with desperate fire, and for a moment, she understood. The guardians were not here to destroy them. They were here to see what they would do. One guardian loomed above her, its stone arm raised high. She could destroy it. She had the power. But in her heart, she knew the test was not about killing. It was about protecting. Her gaze fell on Daniel, small and fragile, clinging to the wall. The one who had given her hope. With a roar, she turned. Her back on the guardian and wrapped her arms around him, shielding him with her body. She closed her eyes, waiting for the strike, but the strike never came. Silence filled the chamber. Slowly, she opened her eyes. The guardians had stopped. Their glowing eyes dimmed, their heavy bodies froze in place. Cracks spread across their forms until, one by one, they collapsed into dust. The crystal pulsed brighter than ever. Daniel stared in awe. His voice trembled, but it was filled with wonder. You chose to protect, not to destroy. That's what it wanted. That's why it stopped. She looked at him, her chest rising with heavy breaths. Sweat and blood marked her skin, but in her eyes burned something new, belief for the first time. She believed she was worthy. The crystal's glow spread across the chamber, filling it with warmth. Daniel stepped forward, his hand trembling as he touched it again. This time, the light did not attack. Instead, it flowed gently, wrapping around both of them. He whispered, almost to himself, This is the power of creation. She felt it too. A warmth deep inside, filling the emptiness that had haunted her for years. The council had lied. Her body was not too big for life. It had been made for life. Tears blurred her vision, but she did not hide them. For the first time, hope was real. But hope always came with danger. As the light faded, Daniel's face twisted in pain. His body shook, his hands clutching his chest. The crystal had given her strength, but it demanded something from him. She rushed to him, catching him before he fell. His eyes opened weakly, his voice breaking. It's not free. There's always a cost. She held him tightly, fear burning in her chest. She had found the secret of life, but it might take the only bond she had ever known. Daniel's body shook in her arms. His skin was pale, his lips cracked, and his eyes burned faintly with the crystal's light. The chamber no longer glowed with beauty. It felt dangerous, alive, like it was feeding on him. She held him tighter, her voice trembling, though he could not understand her words. No, I will not lose you. He coughed weakly, trying to smile through the pain. His hand rose to her chest, resting there with effort. His voice cracked. It's not your curse. It's your gift. Don't waste it. Don't waste this chance. Her heart twisted. For years, she had been told she could never carry life, never know the bond of a mother. Now, for the first time, hope was real, but that hope was trying to tear Daniel away from her. She looked at the crystal, its steady pulse like a living heart. She could feel its promise. It could give her what was stolen, the power to create. But its hunger was taking Daniel's strength. A choice waited before her, to accept the gift and lose him, or reject it and remain barren forever. The ground trembled again. The crystal flared, light spilling across the walls, showing visions of the past. She saw her ancestors towering and strong, holding children in their arms. She saw their joy, their love, their pride. The vision shifted. She saw herself, standing alone in the desert, cast out, forgotten. And then, another image, herself, holding something small and fragile, a newborn glowing with life. Her breath caught, her chest ached. The crystal was not just showing her the past, it was showing her what could be. Daniel's voice broke the vision. Don't be afraid. She looked at him, this fragile man from another world, bleeding and weak. He had no reason to stay, no reason to protect her, yet he had. He had given her trust when no one else ever had, and now he was asking her to believe in herself. With a deep breath, she rose to her feet, lifting him in her arms. Step by step, she carried him toward the crystal. The guardians were gone, the chamber silent, but she felt the weight of every step as if the whole world was watching. When she reached the crystal, she placed Daniel down gently at its base. She pressed her large hand to its glowing surface. The chamber came alive. Light burst outward, racing through the carvings, filling every crack in the walls. The air burned hot, heavy with power. Her body shook, her veins glowing with fire as the crystal's energy poured into her. For a moment, she thought it would kill her. Her chest tightened, her bones ached, her mind filled with roaring sound. But then the pain softened. The fire turned to warmth, and inside her, something new began to stir. A spark, a heartbeat. Life, her eyes widened. Tears fell down her face. The emptiness she had carried for years was gone. The crystal had answered her deepest wish. She was no longer barren. She was no longer broken. She was a mother. But the joy twisted into terror. Daniel cried out, his body arching in pain. The same light that gave her life was tearing his fragile body apart. His chest glowed as if the crystal wanted his very soul. She screamed, her voice shaking the chamber. She ripped her hand from the crystal and dropped to his side, holding him tight. No. Her voice thundered, echoing against the stone. Take me, not him. The crystal pulsed once more, as if listening. The light shifted. Slowly, the glow around Daniel dimmed. His body went limp, his breath shallow but alive. The light flowed back into her, settling deep inside her chest. Her tears fell onto his face. His eyes fluttered open, weak but alive. He whispered, almost too soft to hear. You did it. She cradled him, her heart torn between joy and fear. Yes, she had done it. She had gained the gift her people said was impossible. Inside her, life was growing. A miracle, but the cost was clear. Daniel had been touched by the crystal, marked in ways she did not understand. His life was still fragile, still hanging on the edge. She looked up at the chamber, at the carvings glowing faintly. The crystal had given her power, but it had also given her a warning. Life always came with sacrifice. She held Daniel close, her voice steady despite her fear. I will not lose you. I will not let them take this from us. Her words echoed. In the silence, a promise to the ruins, to the desert, to the universe itself. She had been exiled, broken, forgotten. But now she carried the future inside her. And no one, not her people, not the guardians, not even the crystal, would take it away. The desert was no longer silent. Far across the dunes, drums echoed. Horns howled in the night. Her old colony was coming. They had seen the storm, felt the awakening of the crystal, and they feared what had been born inside her. She stood at the edge of the cave, the wind in her hair, her hands resting over her stomach. For the first time in her life, she felt something alive within her, not just her heartbeat, but another. Fragile, precious. A future behind her, Daniel struggled to stand. His body was weak, still marked by the crystal's touch, but his eyes burned with fire. They'll kill you, he whispered. They'll kill us both. She turned, meeting his gaze. Her deep voice rumbled softly. Then we fight. By dawn, they appeared. Dozens of her people, tall and strong, marched across the sand. At their center walked the council who had once cast her out. Their faces were cold, their voices cruel. "She carries what should not exist," the leader spat, pointing at her. With trembling fury, her body was judged unfit for life. Yet she defies us, playing with forbidden power. She must be destroyed before the sickness spreads. The crowd behind him murmured, their eyes filled with fear. To them, she was no mother. She was a danger. Daniel stepped forward, leaning heavily on his staff of broken metal. His voice, though weak, carried across the desert, called her too big, too different. But I have seen her strength. I have seen her heart. Without her, I would be dead. Without her, there would be no hope. The colony stared at him, confused by his strange tongue. They did not understand his words, but they understood his defiance. A fragile human stood against them, unafraid. And then she stepped forward. Her shadow stretched long across the sand. The morning sun caught her scars, her wounds, her towering frame. For years, those marks had been proof of her shame. Today, they were proof of her survival. She raised her voice, deep and thunderous, shaking the air. "You said I was broken. You said I could never carry life. You cast me into the desert to die. But look at me now." She pressed her hand to her stomach. "Life grows inside me, stronger than your lies, stronger than your fear. I am not broken. I am a mother." The crowd gasped. Some whispered in anger, some in awe. The council's leader shouted back, his voice desperate. "You carry a curse. You carry death." Her eyes burned. She stepped closer, her voice like rolling thunder. "No, I carry the future." The colony hesitated. Fear gripped them, but doubt flickered in their eyes. They had believed the council's words all their lives. But now they stood face to face with proof. The leader raised his hand to command an attack. Warriors shifted, ready to strike, and then Daniel limped forward again, standing at her side. His hand touched hers, small against her giant frame. His voice rang out, broken but fierce. "She is not alone." That moment changed everything. The sight of a human, fragile, wounded, yet fearless, standing beside the exile, shattered their certainty. If even an alien from the stars would trust her, then perhaps she was not a curse. Perhaps she was something greater, but the council would not yield. With a cry of rage, the leader charged, spear raised. She did not retreat. She stepped forward, catching the weapon in her hand and snapping it like dry wood. Her roar shook the ground. No more lies, no more chains. The leader fell back, eyes wide with fear. He stumbled, powerless before her strength, before her fire. The crowd was silent. Then, slowly, voices began to rise. First a whisper, then a shout. Not words of hate, but words of awe. They began to chant her name. For the first time, her people saw her not as too big, but as enough. More than enough, the council fled. Their power broken. The warriors lowered their weapons. And she, once the exile, stood in the center of the desert as something new. Not a monster, not a failure, but a mother of the future. Daniel leaned against her, his strength fading, but his smile bright. He whispered softly, "They will follow you now, not because they fear you, but because they believe." Her hand rested gently over her stomach. The spark of life inside her beat strong, steady, a promise that tomorrow would be different. She looked at her people, the same people who had once cast her into darkness, and raised her voice one last time. "You cast me out, but love brought me back. And from this day, no child will be called too different. No life will be denied." The desert echoed with her words. The colony bowed their heads, and in that moment she was no longer exile, no longer broken. She was a mother, not just of one child, but of a new future.